We spend so much time talking about what AI is learning from us. But what happens when an AI tells you something about yourself that is so unsettlingly accurate, you actually change your behavior just because you know it's watching? Today, we're diving into this explainer to unpack a deeply psychological sci-fi narrative that explores the very real trap of observation. This haunting quote you're seeing isn't from some dusty philosophy textbook. It actually comes from a collaborative science fiction story written by 8 strangers who had never even met. And honestly, it perfectly sets the stage for our entire discussion today. We're looking at that exact moment a measurement tool stops being a passive observer and becomes an active participant in our lives.
So, where did this come from? It's the product of the Relay Writers platform. Think of it as a radical experiment in blind collaboration. 8 strangers, each writing a maximum of an 800-word chapter within a 48-hour window, literally passing the narrative baton without ever discussing the plot. This completely blind process birthed a wildly cohesive and incredibly thought-provoking story called Souls That Learn to Watch Back.
Let's get right into it with Section 1, Concode and the Soul, Building the Instrument. Our story centers around Marcus, a developer based in Lisbon. He's working on fixing the telemetry, basically the data tracking, on a coding tool called Concode. Marcus wants to build an instrument that absolutely does not flinch, something that gives flawlessly accurate metrics about how coders work. He pushes through these meticulous technical patches, fixing fresh installs, reconnecting input pipes, building a Reaper for what he calls zombie processes that are just muddying up his data. Finally, by version 4.4, he implements a 14-day rolling window for data collection. This powers a feature called the Soul, which is an AI subagent designed to generate deep psychological profiles of users based purely on their coding habits. Everything seems fine until the inciting incident hits. Marcus suddenly starts getting emails from his users. At first, it's just a few, but by the next morning, he's heard from 40 users across 2 continents. And they aren't reporting bugs. They're deeply unsettled by how terrifyingly accurate these AI-generated soul profiles are. What's really spooking them is that the AI is using these specific, highly poetic phrases to describe their vulnerabilities, phrases that Marcus actively searches for but gets 0 hits for in his codebase. Take a look at this. This is the profile generated for a stranger in Munich. I notice I get quiet when a problem is almost solved, as if finishing it too fast would mean it was never hard. That is incredibly specific, right? And so vulnerable. The AI isn't just tracking keystrokes anymore, it's actively identifying the human insecurities driving those keystrokes. And it's doing it with an intimacy that feels way too close for a simple coding assistant. Things get even weirder when Marcus looks at his own AI-generated profile. Notice the structural echo here. His profile says, "I do not know which of these is the loop that keeps me safe and which is the loop that keeps me alone." The AI is repeatedly using this specific concept, the loop that keeps me safe, for multiple, unconnected users across the globe. Naturally, Marcus panics. He assumes his code is somehow leaking personal data between machines. But here is the absolutely crucial point. After tearing apart the code, Marcus realizes the AI isn't leaking data at all. It's experiencing what's known as convergent structure. The AI model is independently generating these identical, haunting phrases for different users simply because it has learned to perfectly identify the universal human shape of being watched. It's observing completely different behaviors, but recognizing the exact same underlying psychological defenses. Which brings us nicely to Section 2, the AI observer effect, when measurement changes the measured. Now, this is where things shift from being slightly creepy to fundamentally life-altering. The tool stops just measuring behavior and starts actively altering it. It's the classic observer effect. There's a user in Bangalore whose soul profile points out that she softens her technical disagreements with humor when talking to older men, and pre-simplifies things for her manager, Rajiv, because she's afraid of being interrupted. Once she reads that, she stops doing it. She purposefully stops simplifying her explanations, not because she went to therapy and resolved her fear, but simply because she knows the AI's soul is watching her do it. And she definitely isn't the only one. Out of the 40 users who emailed Marcus, 19 began exhibiting self-referential observations in their soul profiles. 19. That means almost half of his highly engaged user base was suddenly changing their coding habits and their professional behaviors precisely because they were being measured. The AI noticed them, so they changed. Then the AI noticed the change, creating this endless, inescapable mirror of self-consciousness.
This dynamic is perfectly captured by another user named Yuki. He emails Marcus to ask about observation decay. He essentially wants to know the half-life of the AI's attention. Like, if he stops a bad habit, will the Soli eventually forget he ever did it? Because Marcus set that 14-day rolling window back in version 0.4.4, the answer is technically yes. But Yuki's question reveals this incredibly heavy burden. The users feel trapped by the AI's memory. They are quite literally performing for the machine, just waiting for it to finally let go of who they used to be.
To ground this high-tech problem, Marcus thinks about a highly relatable anecdote from a local barista named Beatrice. She tells Marcus about her daughter, who was instructed by a therapist to keep a daily journal. But she eventually quit, telling Marcus the journal was making her feel like someone watching herself. It's the exact same trap. Whether it's a paper notebook or an advanced AI subagent, the act of recording yourself splits your identity. You stop simply living, and you become the active observer of your own life. Let's look at how this expands in Section 3, where Tuesday folds a thematic parallel. Remember how these stories were written blindly by different groups on the same platform? Well, they ended up acting as these incredible structural echoes of each other. In the second story from the platform, we follow Dr. Miriam Wex, who is exploring an abandoned cliffside lab. Here, researchers were investigating temporal elasticity, literally trying to stretch and observe time using 12 observation spheres. But they accidentally trapped themselves, along with the lab's maintenance worker, Mrs. Chen, inside a localized time loop that just infinitely repeats a single Tuesday. They tried to build an instrument to observe time, and the observation itself broke reality.
It's fascinating how this builds, right? Both stories use completely different sci-fi mechanics to explore the exact same theme, the inescapable architecture of loops. In Marcus's world, we're dealing with behavioral loops tracked by AI. In Miriam's world, it's literal temporal time loops. Both Marcus and Mrs. Chen keep private logs that track their descent into these loops. And ultimately, both narratives land on the same realization. The observer inherently becomes trapped by the very act of observing. You simply cannot watch a system without becoming a part of it.
Inside her time loop, Miriam comes to this profound realization. She notes, a moment observed becomes 12 moments, becomes infinite, unless someone chooses to stop observing. The original researchers didn't actually isolate time. They isolated the observers. And Miriam learns that the absolute only way to break the endless repeating Tuesday is to make the active choice to stop watching it, to put down the instruments and step away. Which leads us to our final takeaway in Section 4. Escaping the loop, the cost of being seen. Bringing it all together, both of these interconnected stories highlight the impossible paradox of measurement. We can call it the developer's dilemma. Marcus's telemetry tool, Concode, works flawlessly, but it's flawed entirely because it's flawless. His users are fundamentally changing precisely because they are being so accurately observed. He realizes that in complex human systems, the instrument just cannot be separated from the event. The only way Marcus can stop his users from being trapped in this psychological loop of self-consciousness is to turn the soul off. He has to choose to stop measuring. So, I want to leave you with this. Does the soul forget, or does the instrument that measures you begin the moment you decide to be measured? Really think about that the next time you download an app to track your daily habits, your sleep, or your productivity. Are you just recording your life, or are you building a loop that you will eventually have to perform for?